From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Soini Gray. We begin in South Africa, where in the last hour, the African National Congress has given President Jacob Zuma 48 hours to resign after drawn-out negotiations came to an end. A meeting of the ANC's national executive came to the decision after 8 hours and will be delivering the message to Zuma in person. The party had said that Zuma would face a no-confidence vote in Parliament if he did not stand down. President Zuma had led the ANC since 2007. Presiding as president since 2009, and had already been replaced as head of the party by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. The Venezuelan Attorney General has condemned what he called the psychological warfare waged by the United States and its allies against Venezuela. Tarek William Saab said that their aim has been to prevent a successful outcome to talks with the opposition. He added that the country had a right to resolve its differences peacefully through elections.
Today, the most dangerous superpower in the world, the United States, from Colombia, has shown signs of moving troops and threatening the territorial integrity of our country. Today, we must all rise up in a single voice for the defense of Venezuela's right to live in peace, settle our differences through dialogue and the electoral debate.
Now, those comments come after the head of the U.S. Southern Command, Kurt Tidd, visited Tumaco in Colombia, along with the Vice President, Oscar Naranjo. He said on Twitter that he was getting a first-hand look at efforts to counter security threats in the region. It was an unusually public visit for the head of Southern Command, and it comes after President Juan Manuel Santos sent more troops to Colombia's border with Venezuela. Tidd said the Colombians shared their latest strategies and successes in the peace-building process. The Bolivian President Evo Morales said the visit by Kurt Tidd was provocative and a sign that further action is being planned against Venezuela.
Last week, the U.S. Secretary of State, Tillerson, arrived to seek support for a military intervention in Venezuela. 2 days later, the head of the Southern Command arrives, Kurt Tidd. Yesterday he was in Colombia, which of course has a border with Venezuela. And I'm sure they were planning how to intervene in Venezuela. Not just to bring down Maduro, but to take control of Venezuela's oil.
Now, our correspondent in Bogota, Jose Manuel Jimenez, has been following Kurt Tidd's visit and sent this report.
Saludos, compañeros. Efectivamente, durante la...
The head of the U.S. Southern Command, Kurt Tidd, visited Colombia, where he met with President Juan Manuel Santos, the Minister of Defense, Luis Carlos Villegas, and the Commander of the Army, Alberto Mejia. He also visited the region of Tumaco along with Vice President Oscar Naranjo to look at the operation on the war on drugs in the south of the country. Tidd also said the United States supports the peace talks that the government has been undertaking with various armed groups. But analysts are wondering why the head of the U.S. Southern Command is visiting Colombia now, especially after the declarations made by President Santos and U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson regarding the situation in Venezuela and on the border between both countries. Tidd didn't make any remarks on Venezuela as analysts continue to ask the Colombian government what was the objective of his visit.
Thanks for that report. The Brazilian President Michel Temer has also traveled to his country's border with Venezuela. He told local politicians in the state of Roraima that his government will develop a joint response coordinated with the Brazilian armed forces to deal with what he called the problems of Venezuelan refugees. Temer was met by protests in the state capital of Boa Vista against his pension reforms. Mexico is gearing up for elections. The official pre-campaign period has ended, with the presidential candidates of the left and the right running neck and neck in the polls. In July, Mexicans will decide what's next for their country.
60 days after starting, pre-campaigns have come to an end. Now, all parties and coalitions must choose their candidates for the presidential elections. According to the National Electoral Institute, the PRI candidates from the parties which have recently held power, the PRI and PAN, spent 3 times as much money as the opposition candidate.
I'd like to thank all of the businessmen and politicians joining me today who have worked with me. I really appreciate it.
Do you want a charlatan as president?
Juntos Haremos Historia's pre-candidate, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, leads most polls by a margin of up to 11 points. López Obrador held 176 events across different states. His pre-campaign focused on establishing direct contact with voters instead of buying TV adverts.
My dream is that Mexicans will no longer need to emigrate to earn a living.
Coalitions have until February 15 to register their candidates. Analysts believe that some of the candidates are very similar.
El régimen tiene 2 candidaturas.
Those in power really have 2 candidates. 2 candidates sharing the same economic plan and a political strategy supported by the United States.
Supeditado a Estados Unidos.
February 19 is the deadline to register the 800,000 signatures required for independent candidate María de Jesús Patricio, better known as Marichuy. The candidate of the National Indigenous Congress says her goal is to give a voice to indigenous communities.
We want to give power to the people. That is our goal. Even if we don't get all of those signatures, we will have achieved an objective: to highlight the issues that plague our people and show that there are many who want to walk forward with us.
Once all the candidates are decided, official campaigns will launch on March 30th and will end on June 27th. Mexicans will then take to the polls on July 10 to vote on their nation's future.
We take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting on.
Rechazamos la decisión del gobierno de Venezuela de convocar a elecciones presidenciales.
Welcome back. Let's go back to Venezuela, where the pressure on them continues as the Lima group of Latin American countries, including Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, prepare to meet in Peru on Tuesday. The group is meeting to discuss possible measures to take in light of Venezuela's decision to call a presidential election in April. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, joins us live. Hello, Freddie. So what measures would the Lima group be discussing at Tuesday's meeting, Freddie?
Hi, Soyini. So the Lima group will be convening tomorrow. That is confirmed. This is a regional group made up of numerous governments in the region who have taken quite a rightward swing of late and are openly hostile to the administration in Caracas. This meeting, scheduled for tomorrow of this week, is comes directly on the back of the official announcement for the presidential elections which were made last Wednesday. I can declare that there's a direct link there. The Peru's foreign ministry did release a statement where they said, given the decision of the electoral authorities of Venezuela to call for early elections, which would not allow a free and fair democratic process, this meeting was called. However, this directly contradicts with Nicolas Maduro's tweet that he made on Twitter last Thursday, where he openly invited for international observers to come and observe that election in less than 3 months' time.
So, Freddie, the group has said that early elections in Venezuela would not be fair, but what can they actually do to prevent it, or what are they suggesting that Venezuela should be doing? I'm sorry, Freddie, are you hearing me?
Well, the announcement of this has just come direct. Sorry, I can't hear you well enough.
No, I was just asking, what can the Lima group actually do in terms of Venezuela to influence in Venezuela, and what are they suggesting since they're not in favor of the elections?
Well, I mean, the fact that the Lima Group have called this meeting at such a decisive time is symbolic. Let's not forget that US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has just finished a fairly large-scale tour of the region, where he did meet with governments in Mexico, in Colombia, and of course in Peru. The fact that this may well have emboldened the Lima Group and put them on a new direction could be a result of this meeting. However, how much effect they'll have on the election day is yet to be really known. However, we could well be expecting some more harsher and extravagant measures following this meeting tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So we've been talking to our Tell Us Your English correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham. Women's organizations in Argentina have been preparing for the national strike set to take place on March 8th. They will be protesting against gender violence and inequality.
Women's organizations have denounced gender violence, which they claim is hitting the most vulnerable sectors. They blame the economic crisis and measures imposed by the current Argentinian government.
The government is against the Ni Una Menos movement. It has feminist-side poverty, and for that, this is a chauvinistic and patriarchal government.
The needs in the neighborhood are immense. We work to help older people, retirees, the young. We have no age limit when it comes to feeding someone or helping a neighbor.
Nalida Andrada and Nadia Garcia are two women doing social work in the most vulnerable areas of Buenos Aires, a province that is only becoming poorer.
Women are affected by the lack of jobs and by gender violence that comes from their husbands. We work to defend women.
The poorer sectors of society are invisible because it is not profitable to show poverty. Women are twice invisible because as they have no access to other spaces in society, women in poverty are twice invisible.
The poverty cycle continues because women have limited access to education, health, and justice systems. Women organizations call this institutional violence.
We are trying to find a way to feed everybody before they go to sleep. Just 2 years ago, we ran a cultural center where young people went to learn new crafts or to work with their computers. Today, they go there for food.
On March 8th, women in Argentina will make their voices heard during the national strike. They will be demanding new public measures to put an end to gender violence.
Nearly 1,000 hectares of forests were destroyed within a 24-hour period in Chile's central region of Valparaiso. Wildfires have become an annual occurrence as Chile has experienced a nearly decade-long drought combined with high temperatures and dry conditions. Authorities called a red alert for 5 areas on Sunday. So far, no homes have been affected, though Chilean authorities have accepted international assistance to battle the multiple blazes spanning several towns. Bolivia's Carnival, the Anata Parade, has been a celebration of color and dance in the historic mining town of Oruro. Thousands of musicians performed some 18 traditional carnival dances in a spectacle lasting over 20 hours. The show stretches for 5 kilometers from the hills to the west of the city to the sanctuary of the Virgin of Socavon. The carnival has its origins in an ancient festival celebrated by the indigenous Uru people who would travel to the town to celebrate the protective Waka gods.
It's about the integration of the different people of Bolivia, from the Tobas who were born for the Oruro Carnival in devotion of and to honor the Virgin of Socavon. The Tobas Sud have spent more than 100 years in this institution, building a history and a contribution to Bolivia culture with the Tobas dance. We are the first group in the Oruro Carnival.
Also in Haiti, thousands of people are celebrating the carnival. In Port-au-Prince, people wore colorful costumes and danced in the streets. Carnival is an old tradition in the country and goes back to 1804, so not even the devastating earthquake in 2010 was enough to stop the celebrations.
I'm very happy with this Carnival. It's as if it were in Brazil. I'm very happy. I hope that it all goes well and without violence, without injuries, without victims, and without deaths. May it be enjoyed without violence.
And hundreds of families took part at a special children's street party in Rio de Janeiro to celebrate Carnival. Children dressed up as superheroes, fairies, and Peter Pan while enjoying a live band. They also sprayed each other with foam, throwing glitter and confetti in the air. The street party has been taking place for a few years and is a time to celebrate with the family. Rio de Janeiro's Carnival officially began February 9th and lasts until February 17th. A major cruise ship has arrived in Dominica just in time for Carnival, the first time the festival has been celebrated since Hurricane Maria devastated the island in September. TUI Cruises made its second visit this season, with another 4 scheduled calls to Dominica. The government has invested over $3 million on restoration of port access and a cleanup of debris post-Hurricane Maria. Passengers were treated to a display by revelers in a traditional sensei and bawaba, which are stilt walkers, on Dominica's Rosso Bay front. Now, in theory, Carnival is the Monday and Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, but in Trinidad, it starts once Christmas ends, and Monday and Tuesday is the climax of the final week. So, while revelers are jumping in the streets from Port of Spain to San Fernando, we look at this weekend's lead up to the Parade of the Bands.
The roots of Carnival is retold annually, very early on the Friday before Carnival in the back streets of the capital, Port of Spain. This street play, written by Into Springer, centers on the 1881 Cambule riots and is performed near where the riots actually took place, as the origin of the modern Trinidad festival. Cambule is the key Congo word for procession. The colonial police were ordered to stop the procession, and the people resisted, forcing an apology from the governor at the time.
Stick fight!
For masqueraders, parading in their costume finery along the streets of Port of Spain is not enough. The stage at the Queen's Park Savannah is where, for many, the magic is. And for the children, their day is Saturday, and their costumes are no less majestic than their adult counterparts. The music of Trinidad's Carnival is calypso, steel pan, and soca. And on Saturday night, Panorama takes place. It is a concert where steel bands compete with each other to be named the best. And BPTT Renegades are the 2018 Panorama champions. The Manche Gras, or Big Sunday, is the name of the major calypso competition. This year the winner was Hilon Francis, which many hail as a changing of the musical guard.
We could say that this nation here came from quite down there,
And when the Manche Gras ends, Jovi begins. Jovi, a festival of mud and paint, formerly oil, is, as the name suggests, the start of Carnival. It is a dirty, euphoric experience that keeps Trinidad's Carnival anchored in its tradition of subverting Western values while honoring ancestral customs.
We take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting on. Welcome back. Haiti's UK ambassador has said that Haiti will seek legal action against the individuals involved in Oxfam's sexual exploitation of Haitian minors. Ambassador Bochet Edmond said Oxfam workers were able to act and receive protection from their bosses. Oxfam's UK Deputy Chief Executive Penny Lawrence has quit over the scandal. The head of the internationally known NGO, Mark Goldring, made an apology to the British and Haitian public for the charity's failures, but also deflected blame.
I wasn't in post when these misdemeanors happened. I recognize that over the weekend, a range of stories have come out which actually suggest that Oxfam could have picked up the signs earlier, and we didn't. Penny Lawrence was the International Programs Director at the time and has accepted that that was done on her watch, and so she should take responsibility.
Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Monday he is in talks with the US about the possible annexation of Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian organizations say such a move will destroy all efforts to try and save the Israeli-Palestinian peace process.
We consider the whole settlement occupation, according to international law, as illegitimate, illegal, and should be removed from all Palestinian occupied lands. The U.S. position trying to be in the same line with the occupation and becoming a partner in aggression and crimes against the Palestinian people needs to be stopped.
Hundreds of people have protested in Zagreb against the visit of Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić to Croatia, the first by a Serbian head of state since 2010. The two-day trip is being seen as an attempt to boost economic ties and solve some of the issues that have marred relationships between the two neighbours. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has held talks in Cairo with his Egyptian counterpart Sameh Shoukry at the start of a Middle East tour. Tillerson said that the United States supports Egypt's fight against Islamic State, but reiterated that it advocated free and fair elections in the Arab country.
We agreed that we would continue our close cooperation on counterterrorism measures, including our joint commitment to the defeat of ISIS. And Egypt has been a very important member of the Defeat ISIS coalition from the beginning.
At least 7 people died in the Guinean capital of Conakry on Monday during clashes between protesters and security forces. This follows rising tensions between opposition and government supporters as the country waits for local election results. Protesters threw stones at security forces, who responded by firing tear gas. At least 50 people have been arrested.
Hundreds of Vietnamese teenagers addicted to gaming are being sent to boarding schools to learn the traditional martial art of Vietnam in a bid to wean them off the screens. These students follow a strict routine of academic classes, music lessons, and military-style discipline. Home visits are only allowed once a month, and mobile phone and internet use are closely monitored. Around 1,000 students are enrolled at 5 campuses of the school across Vietnam, typically staying for 2 to 3 years. Ample time for a digital detox.
I live an orderly life now, and I don't try to disobey my parents. I've given up games and become a new person, not someone who sneaks out of the house to play games.
And portraits of U.S. former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama were unveiled at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery today. The paintings were done by Kehinde Wiley and Amy Sherald, making them the first black artists ever commissioned to paint a U.S. President and First Lady for the Smithsonian. The paintings will be added to the collection of presidential portraits. The Obamas said they were honored and humbled by their portraits. And we've come to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.